Okay, good morning or good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Can everyone hear me?
Good afternoon.
Clearly, good morning.
Good afternoon. Good afternoon. Thank you so much for joining. On behalf of EduStart and Sycamore Africa, so I want to welcome everyone to the third virtual session of Rethinking Education, Jobs, and Prosperity. I hope your loved ones are safe and well. Yesterday we had two really insightful sessions focused on designing a new type of post-secondary education that really works, for individuals and for the nation. I'll let the moderator introduce to this session, but before I let him do that, I want to especially thank all the panelists for taking our time to be with us. I know you have very busy schedules, so I want to thank you, especially Akin, Lutana, Mudupe, and Sunny for taking our time to be with us today. Thank you so much. We realized from yesterday's session that we don't have enough time really, so we'll just start immediately. I'll ask Joshua to take over from here. Joshua, over to you.
Yeah, thank you so much, Stephen. Hello, everyone. Hello, Akin. Mudupe. Thank you for joining so early. And today, day two, panel one, we're talking about empowerment, entrepreneurship, and jobs. And you already know that this event is brought to you by EduStart Africa and Sycamore Africa. Sycamore Africa's goal is to create a pipeline of industry leaders through innovative education design. And you can panel it for 90 minutes, and the first 5 minutes will be the introduction where we get to welcome everyone. We're also going to have the panel introduce themselves. We have preliminary questions for 45 minutes, and then opportunity for spontaneous questions for another 15 minutes. Then we have our Q&A and closure. On behalf of EduStart, I warmly welcome you to the third virtual session of Rethinking Education, Jobs and Prosperity, titled Empowerment, Jobs and Entrepreneurship. Yesterday, we had sessions focused on post-secondary education design, and then the videos are on YouTube. So we'll share the videos with everyone via email. And if you missed that, we hope that everyone, your loved ones, are doing okay. My name is Joshua Lade, and I'm the project coordinator of the Nigerian Youth SDGs Network, which is the coalition of youth-led civil society organizations localizing the United Nations 2030 agenda through advocacy and active SDGs project implementation. And I will be your moderator for today. Here are some quick tips and rules we'll be following to facilitate today's discussion. I want you to know that this event is being recorded, and also for non-English speakers, we have the ability for you to be able to interpret this the ongoing conversation. And all participants, please ensure that your microphones are on mute. Only the speakers will be able to talk. If you are a speaker or you become one during this event, then please make sure that you unmute yourself. Please use the chat box if you have any questions. Kindly use the Q&A to ask your questions. Remember that our social media is at Sycamore Africa and EduStart Global. So for this conversation, we'll be using Rethinking Education as a hashtag. Our team will collect all ideas as part of the final report to be sent out to all participants and partners. Great. I hope this is clear to everyone. If you have any questions, you can ask directly by using the chat box on the Q&A session. Before we get started with our discussion today, Allow me to introduce the distinguished panelists and the dynamics for this conversation. I'm going to be introducing first Akin Oyebode. Akin is a special advisor, investment trade and innovation at the state government and is the immediate past CEO of the Lagos State Employment Trust Fund, a fund established to provide finance support to residents of Lagos State for jobs, growth creation, and to tackle unemployment. Before his foray into the public sector, Akin held roles in research and strategy in the private sector. Akin is playing a vital role in turning Ekiti into a major economic force, and we are glad to have him again today. Please say hello, Akin.
Thanks for having me. Hello, everyone.
Thank you so much, Akin. Next
sir.
on our list is Latana Amina. Latana is the CEO and creative director at Mina Stones, where she leads a team delivering high quality gemstones and jewelry for the Nigerian and international market. In her role, Latana works with rural miners, providing training and social support to them. Latana is passionate about the gemstone industry in Nigeria. She is a co-founder of the annual African Gemstones and Jewelry Exhibition, where she has partnered with the Nigerian Export Promotion Council, the Ministry of Mines and Skills Development, Raw Materials Research and Development Council, and the Abuja Chamber of Commerce and Industry. Please say hello, Latana.
Hi, everyone. Thanks for having me.
Thank you so much, Latana. Modupe Mo Adefeso Lateju is Managing Director of the Education Partnership Center, the CEP Center, and a policy expert specializing in public-private partnerships funded or assisted by international donors and corporate funders, and trained the private sector on a range of in public-private partnerships in education. The lead work streams on a range of education sector support, private initiatives funded or assisted by international, sorry, I think that's again, by international donors and corporate funders, and she trains public sector officials and development organizations on strategic planning and monitoring and evaluation. She's leading the implementation of Learn Nigeria, which is Nigeria's citizen-led household assessment and advocacy program, and hosts the annual Education Innovation Summit, known as NEDIS. Please say hello, Modupe.
Hi, good morning, everyone. Good afternoon, rather. It's great to be here. Thank you very much
Thank
for
you so much, Modupe, for joining us. Our next panelist is Murtala Sani. Sani is the co-founder and CEO of Wisabi, a platform that helps homeowners and businesses find reliable handymen and service providers in their neighborhoods in Africa, starting from Nigeria. Before starting with Sabi, Sani worked in different roles in business and engineering. Please say hello, Sani.
Hello, everyone. Nice for having me here.
Thank you so much for joining us, Sani. So going on, we have to pass to this, and whereby we get to share our panelists get to share ideas and lessons from their experience building programs for young people across Africa. And so something we need to understand that according to the International Labour Organization, it's been stated that about 250 million young people today are neither in job, employment, education, or training. And this means that looking at the COVID-19 pandemic, there is an urgent need for us to invest in jobs, in employment safety net for young people. So during this session, our panelists are going to share from their own wealth of experience on how we can ensure that post-COVID, we have more young people who are either entrepreneurs and young people who are in jobs. So we have a general question for everyone. So in 1 minute, please panelists, I want you to share with the audience something surprising or interesting about your recent work. Hello? Hello.
Hello, Josh. We're still on.
Okay, thank you. Akin, can you please share in 1 minute with our audience something surprising or interesting about your recent work, especially with the Ekiti state government?
I mean, I guess for me, what is interesting or surprising is just seeing the limited broadband penetration in the state. And just how difficult it is to build digital awareness around the state. So for me, I feel that going to the rural areas in Ekiti actually helps me realize how deep the inequality is. Not necessarily today in financial terms, but just access to opportunities, access to learning, access to insights, access to materials, access to capital. You could potentially be talking about two different countries. Working in Lagos, there was some inequality, but it wasn't this stark. But I've just realized a lot more that the further you go away from Lagos, the more subsistence, entrepreneurship tends to be. The harder it is to create high value wage employment. So what then tends to happen is lots of people tend to default to what they know and what they can do, which is agriculture. So for me, I think the biggest, I call it most interesting thing, because I think it spurs a commitment to ensure that we democratize access to technology and access to learning. I'm not saying necessarily everyone is going to end up being a software engineer, but just providing people with democratized access to learning will completely change the productivity levels of many of these towns and communities. And I imagine that as you go further up the Niger, that this inequality and this lack of access just gets worse. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Akin, for that, for sharing that. For me, when I got the news, when I saw it on social media yesterday, I was like, yeah, this is one way that we are going to ensure that we close the digital divide with what you are doing in Ekiti State. Thank you so much. Latana, please, can you help me share with everyone in 1 minute what is interesting and surprising to you about the work you are doing at this present time?
Okay, so I will say more interesting than surprising. And I think I understand a bit what Akin is saying about the people in the rural areas having little or no access to information and all of that. I've been working with a lot of ASM miners for a number of years now. So this period, obviously also because of the current situation in the world, we have to try to help these people because they're part of the most vulnerable that we have in society. So what I've been doing on my end is trying to gather people to keep their trade going. The miners, to gather people in the sector, so like facetors, processors, and things like that, to be able to have, or to be able to have a system of consistent buying, despite the issues that are happening now, because trade channels have been shut down, people aren't buying as used to, and these people are really affected. So I guess this is something I'm currently doing now, and I mean I'm happy to help, and it's an exciting thing for me, because just being in that position to help these people and to keep this trade going for them, it's literally like saving a life. So yeah.
Thank you so much, Latana, for sharing this. Next, we are on to Modupe. Modupe, the work you do at the TEP Center is amazing. So right now, looking at the pandemic, can you share with us something that is interesting or surprising at this particular time based on the work you do?
Thank you very much, Joshua. So if it's all right, I'll share two things very quickly. First is that which genuinely shocked me and helped me to think more critically about how quickly human beings can adapt to change and how quickly we can actually pivot as a community. Now, if 2 months ago, someone had said to me, Mo, you would be leading a webinar with civil servants in Lagos State, and that webinar would have 10,000 registrants, of which 1,010 would be able to join the Zoom call, I would have had a very hearty laugh because I wouldn't have believed it was possible. But this is my reality. I've come to understand that the civil service in Lagos State has been organizing trainings every Tuesday and every Thursday, all remote, building their capacity very quietly. No major complaints about access, to the internet, to Zoom calls. I was completely blown away. And it made me realize that if change can happen so quickly in the private sector, in the public sector, then it means that it can happen even quicker in the private sector if all the levers are pushed appropriately. I'm thinking about access to infrastructure, technology infrastructure especially, access to information, and capacity development. So that's the first thing that surprised me. The second thing is just, I think, a conversation that I had a week ago on a webinar and another one with the same person yesterday. And he was sort of explaining to us how it is that this pandemic is creating such an incredible opportunity for entrepreneurship in my sector, which is the education space. This gentleman was convinced that indeed the next set of billionaires are going to come from the education sector space. And he talked about different opportunities that currently exist, developing learning management system platforms, pre-recording lessons and sharing them, providing remediation classes, what we normally refer to as lesson or private tuition, thinking about how to repurpose infrastructure, the setting up of education resource centers, access to cheap devices, homegrown technology devices like computers and printers. It was mind-blowing. And when one thinks about the opportunities that are available, in the education sector at this point in time, I think that it's worth, shining a bit of light when it comes to empowerment and entrepreneurship, and shining a bit of light, into the education sector. The name of the gentleman is Dr. Sami Koko, in case people want to engage with his work further. Thank you.
Well, thank you so much for sharing this, Modupe. Now we go on to our next panelist. Murtala, please can you share, based on your work at this particular point in time, what is interesting or probably surprising to you based on the work that you do?
Okay, thank you. So two things actually. The surprising thing is the death of polytechnics and technical schools nationwide, in Nigeria, and it actually cuts across Africa, really. So when you look at third world countries that have actually built, raised people a mass out of poverty, you'll notice that it's not, via university education or anything. It's actually via the blue collar, really. So I sometimes I get surprised, where people, that they just, I don't know, they lower the grade of polytechnics, technical schools, and they just think they are nothing. Even people that attend those schools actually want to jump ship to the university and just earn a degree certificate. I do not think everybody needs a degree certificate. I think we need to come to a point where we have to let everybody know that it's actually okay, to just be a builder, to build a skill or something and just work with that, and you can actually live a decent lifestyle with that. So in Wisadi, what we're trying to do, is change that perspective. Right now, we're partnering with the very few technical and vocational schools around, so that if we can improve the lifestyle, of these informal workers, I believe people can see that, okay, so these people can actually live a decent life, and go through this process. So that's it. Thank you.
Thank you for sharing with us, Murtala. Now we are going to dive in immediately into questions for our panelists. And one of the things I would say is that talking about informal jobs. We always say that in Nigeria, and this is really true, that there are just not enough jobs. And during our research, we stumbled on interesting but sad scenarios. And imagine we hear that Nigeria have to import engineers from India, or we try to import chefs from Benin Republic, or people who install windows from Italy. And these are like jobs that in the informal sector that an average Nigerian young person is able to take up. And we also found out that from a very small sample space, that 7 out of 10 households had a fix that they had to postpone for at least 3 months because they do not even have the right people to help them fix it. So, and then looking at the local mining industry, we have enough of potentials, but we've not been able to maximize them. So I'm going to be moving back to Akin. Based on your work with the Lagos State Employment Trust Fund, what do you think is the case? Why is it that within the informal sector, we are complaining that there are not enough jobs for young Nigerians to take up?
Hello, Josh, are you still there?
Hello?
Hello, Josh, are you still there? Okay, maybe we'll just go ahead and I'll just step in for him. Thanks to all our panelists one more time. I'm Steve Nelvatobi. I'll just try to fill in the gap. I believe everyone can really hear me. If you can hear me, kindly confirm. Hello?
Yes, Steve, loud and clear.
Oh, awesome, awesome.
Yes, yes, we can hear you.
Thank you very much. So I think we lost Joshua there, so he will join us shortly. But before we get there, I would just like to quickly pick up something here that one of our attendees mentioned. So she was more particular about the secondary school angle, that is pre-university education. And I'd just like to bring that up now. Just a few seconds, please, while we wait for. So she's asking, this is from Nika Akirele, can we discuss how to reskill our post-secondary children and not those in tertiary? What skills exactly should they begin to focus on? And what opportunities are available here? I would like to address this to you more. And I would like us to really help attend to this, because she was in the 2 panels we had yesterday, and I know she was really excited about this angle, knowing that lots of things that have happened before students actually get into the higher education institution. So how can we really help out in filling such kind of gaps? What kind of skills should we begin to pay attention to, even from the secondary viewpoint, before we even get to the tertiary level? And this is to you, Mo.
Great, thank you very much, Stephen. I think in addressing that question, if you don't mind, I want to take you back to the reality of an incident that happened in 2014, a policy directive that was passed down from the federal ministry through the NERDC. At the time, there was a sense in which we needed to begin to build vocational competencies in young people who were in senior secondary school in preparation for a life of entrepreneurship, so that at least they had some options, in life. And so at the time, 34 trade subjects were developed and infused into the senior secondary curriculum. And they ranged from, agriculture to, photography. There were so many of them, very, very interesting. The reality of the implementation of that policy, however, and I'm going to try and couch that, in a nutshell, is that it initially fell flat on its face because in the first instance, there wasn't enough, I don't think there was enough rigor, that went into designing the specific curriculum for each of those subjects. And 34 subjects is a lot to introduce, and to mandate schools to begin to implement within the space of 1 year. So a lot of those subjects didn't have proper curriculums to guide them. And so schools started to grapple, with how to fill in the gaps. And what happened was that some schools that were very proactive then went to find practitioners. So for example, I know a school that went to look for a photographer to teach the children photography so that they would be able to enter for photography during their WIEC, because the trade subjects were a requirement that particular year. And of course, the photographer is a great photographer, but is not a teacher. And so what the spotlight that shone at that point in time was the dearth of joined up policy thinking. And so it really has become very important for the different actors within the policy space to work together. And so ideally what should have happened is perhaps, you would have a group from the National Commission for Colleges of Education who are responsible for developing and training our teachers, who were involved in the process of developing the curriculum. And so we'll probably have started out with a teacher training curriculum so that we will be able to produce teachers that understand photography, produce teachers that understand, fashion, for example. And that way we'll be able to cascade in a more seamless way. So I think that a lot of the issues around developing skills in young people starts from the top, actually. It starts from how we think about the policies that will help us to get to the end we're going to. I think a second fallout of that for me was the gap between thinking around technical and vocational skills and entrepreneurship, and they're not the same thing. So on the one hand, you can build fantastic skills as an apprentice, but it doesn't mean that you have the capability to run your own business and to infuse the kind of structure, rigor, and discipline that you need to run an enterprise. And so I think sequel to that, there was then more structured thinking around how to actually teach entrepreneurship and not just technical and vocational. So I think to address the question, I think one, we have to look at how policies can be developed, because they will be cascaded down, how policies are developed to help young people develop these skills and also to help them develop the entrepreneurial tendencies and capabilities that they need to be successful. We also have to look at the enabling environment, and this is probably where Akin can speak to, the enabling environment for entrepreneurs, and what sort of opportunities do they have? What sort of access to information do they have? What sort of access to resources, to financing do they have? So I think that the skills we need are clear. We know where our gaps are. We know the sectors of the economy that are booming right now. The creative industry is huge. Nigeria's tourism industry could be amazing. Mining. We don't need to talk about agriculture. We need very technical skills. The pandemic has shown us that we need more sophisticated technology skills as well, and we need them en masse. But it's one thing to have skills, but it's another thing to make sure that those skills can translate into value for the economy. And I strongly believe that starts from the policy level. Stephen?
Yeah, thanks a lot. This is really awesome. And I'm glad you had to pick up on Akin here regarding creating the enabling environment for that. So I'd just like to flow in line with the conversation before I send that question to you for you to attend to. So just by recapping by way of just background before I ask Akin to help us answer this. So let's start by talking about informal jobs. So Akin, in your intro presentation, you mentioned something about the experience in Ekiti is way different from Lagos. That is, the farther we are from Lagos, the more we see a new dimension of entrepreneurship, possibly also as a result of the kind of environment. So looking at informal jobs, because we also need to begin to figure out how can we maximize that angle, because there are not just enough formal jobs. During our research, we stumbled on some number of interesting things and setting start scenarios. For instance, we have some persons who handle some form of informal jobs, maybe mechanics, plumbers, electricians, and the rest of them. And not all of them actually deliver on some of the things that we'd like them to deliver on when it comes to excellence. So some partnerships that we have, including with Bosch, being a German company and being involved in various industries, one of the things we learned from them is that one of the things that strengthens the German economy is the informal jobs. That is, we have persons who have appetite for excellence, attention to details, and a number of things, looking critically and generally. So, Aki, I would just like you to please share from your experience in the LSETF in Lagos. What do you think the case is? How can we begin to sharpen areas around informal jobs? How can we begin to give some dignity to informal jobs and maximize it for human development?
Okay, so and I think that, so there are two things. I'll share some experience from my time at LSETF.
Awesome.
When we started our employability program there, it was effectively to show that we could link vocational skills training to labor markets. And I think the one thing that we often don't do very well is ensuring that we have the labor market linkage from inception. So what then happened was we had corporates and mid-corp businesses who were willing to take on our trainees upon graduation. So as long as these guys went through the program, learned the right skills, they were going to get a job. But we didn't limit it to just employment. We also said, if you then want to run a business, then you can come to us and get a loan to start your business. But recognizing that if you've gone through a 3 to 4 month program that refines your art, and you've had to work within a structured organization, you start to learn some of the personal attributes where what you might call informal sector usually struggles. So things with like just personal effectiveness, time management, etc. But also skills that sharpen your ability to run your own business properly, bookkeeping and just basic customer service skills. So we realized that quite a chunk of the trainees actually opted out of employment and decided that they felt they had learned enough to go and start their own businesses with varying degrees of success. So I think on one side, it's all actually saying, how do we standardize the learning environment for all these what we call informal sector jobs? I think that one of the things that the technical vocational board can do is to democratize how they certify people. So effectively run train-the-trainer programs and let those trainers then be responsible for certification of artisans. What you want to be able to do is to certify artisans at scale. And I think that's where we struggle as a country. We're just unable to say, how do we get 100,000 masons certified? Because what you find is that if we do the certification, we remove some of the information asymmetry in the market. You all of a sudden start to realize that if I go to hire this mason is certified and has the right skills to deliver the jobs I want. I'll call certification of the informal sector jobs. On the second side is also helping these guys with access to capital. And in many instances, part of the work we did at LSETF, so there were loans less than $1,000, and we saw significant value in this low value loan. So I am definitely not one to, to discount the value of providing, what you might consider low value capital for people to start up their businesses. I think the third part, and I like the conversation drifting to enabling environment. We found that, and it's very difficult for people to run businesses in Nigeria. One of the things that we were trying to achieve in Lagos, and I certainly hope that LSETF and the Lagos State government can still achieve, is just standardizing the fees and levies paid by small businesses. We had borrowed an idea that we saw in Kenya, where you effectively pay one levy at once a year, and that then gets distributed to the various agencies of government that should come to you, that keep on coming into your place of business every other week. So effectively, the business knows, hey, if I pay 300,000 naira, I get a permit that says I have paid everything to the state and local government. No one can disturb me anymore, and I'm free to run my business. What worries lots of entrepreneurs is that they just don't have a sense of how much they owe the government, and it is very unpredictable and volatile. Plus, it also takes a lot of man hours from the proprietor of these businesses to then go and start solving problems with whether it's the local government today or the state government tomorrow. So one of the lessons that we are learning in Ekiti now is, look, if we remove the bottlenecks with doing business, and government's job is just to be an enabler and step away from the scene, you start to find that businesses will thrive and become a lot more productive. So honestly, is there appetite in the country to grow informal sector jobs? I think the answer is yes. When we put together about 800 to 1,000 employers of labor, they actually gave us hard numbers of roles that they are unable to fill simply because they cannot find the people with the right skills. And what helps again is having this anchored around specific projects. So we were lucky to have the Dangote Group setting up the refinery and petrochemical plant at the time we started our employability program. So they became our best friends. You know, if Dangote sneezed, we caught a cold. And it wasn't just because it was Aliko Dangote or the Dangote Group. It was because that investment was creating 8,000 to 10,000 jobs in Lagos. And so we had an opportunity where we were training a maximum of 10,000 people. So all we're looking for them to hire was 1,000 or 2,000 of those people, and just to prove the concept. So I think that's the one other thing that we need to start to find. Nigeria needs to figure out 5 or 6 big projects on which you can anchor a lot of, I would say, artisanal or informal sector jobs, whether it's building train lines, whether it's building special economic zones. You find that in many countries, the spin-off of this, what you might call low to mid-income entrepreneurs, usually comes as a result of being anchored around, I'd say, 1 or 2 big ticket projects.
Awesome. Thanks a lot, Akin. Really appreciate this. You've really shared from your depth of experience. I would like to engage you now. Sonny, can you all hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Awesome. So I would like to engage you now because you have started a platform, Wisabi, that helps to get verified handyman service people to help meet needs around here. Akin has given us like a good background from his experience, and also he mentioned also on the enabling environment. Now, your platform is helping to get verified handy people and servicemen and women to see how they could help fix things, whether we can call it informal jobs or whatever means by which you define it. But I'd like you to share with us what exactly is happening here and what are you working on to actually fix this, that is the gaps we have around here. I believe you have a verification process, obviously.
Yes.
Yeah. So please, can you share with us a lot?
Okay. So thank you. In the beginning, I think we were kind of naive. So we started back in 2015. So our aim was just partner with vocational centers in every state and spread through that way. That was when it hit us that look, even in Lagos and Abuja, there are actually no vocational centers. Like in Lagos, there are certified vocational centers, and not even more than 3 or 4. And the people that actually go through the system are so few. So even when we went in and partner with these guys, when we started moving in with our publicity, marketing our platform out there, we actually got overwhelmed, and we had to go for the independent guys that didn't actually go through this process. So there's still gap in the training process, really, because while the independent guys, yes, they might, be good on their own, I think they still lack, a lot of things that we noticed that we've been taught at the vocational schools, like how to relate with customers. Those things were actually being taught in the vocational school. So, there was a gap there. There's a gap there. And another major gap really is trust issues. Really. So basically, the way people, usually call these people is, for them to ask friends, or neighbors, okay, have you used a plumber? Please, do you have a plumber that you used, and all of that. But even still at that, people still nag about them because there is this trust issue with their skill and the way they approach the business in itself. So the former speaker mentioned something which actually interests me. A lot of these guys could actually have the known skill, like, okay, I'm a very good mason, I'm a very good electrician, but they don't have the business acumen. So a lot of times they don't know how to relate with customers. So 2 years ago, we started a program where the independent guys that we got, we actually started retraining them on customer service. We brought them in, although that got a little bit expensive for us, so we had to put a cost to that. So that was those were the major gaps that we found in the business, in the sector, when the business in the sector were the major gaps that that were there. So I still go back to, I think the technical school should be made attractive. Yes, maybe you might find some very good personnel that are not able to teach, but it's not like even the universities that we go, it's not like our professors are the inventors of this world. Finding a teacher is different from finding the best person in this field. So those are part of the things that I think we have to find a way to manage. We just have to find a way to make the informal sector attractive. That's just the way, and that's the way to even prosper as a country. Everybody, go out there, go to the university, get a certificate, and they have no skills, really. A lot of people out there with certificates have no skills. So as long as we need to find, a balance of making the informal sector very attractive. We need to educate the people that someone being a plumber doesn't actually mean he's an illiterate. No, it doesn't really mean. So another thing that we're doing recently is, so we've identified major technical schools around. Like right now, we're trying to partner with Etiwa. Etiwa is in Lagos, and they're very, very standardized. So we can partner with them, and we can launch a partner project with, okay, as long as you can go through this technical school, you are assured of job. Because even if you can show the public that this person is well trained, is well cultured, I think the public will be, they will increase their home maintenance services. So that's it.
Thank you so much, Murtala. Really expressive. Thank you so much for that. I would like to zoom in on you, Lotana. You are in the mining industry, and you provide support to rural miners, which possibly could fall into the category of those in informal jobs. So I would like you to focus on this industry and also share with us what exactly is going on, and are we actually maximizing this industry? Knowing that we have lots of precious metals and stones in this country that has global demand. What exactly is going on? Are we actually maximizing this industry effectively, particularly as it relates to talents, whether they be informal or not, and also the industry as a whole? Kindly share with us, please.
All right, thank you. So I'm going to talk on, because I share two different views. I'm both training these miners and I'm also employing. So I also have a company. So I think I can present some views in that as well. I think the major thing for the mining sector will be the enabling environment, as we say, I mean, the structure of the contracts, the policies, the enabling environment is just not really there. And there's a huge finance issue or lack of finance in the mining sector. I think a lot of people are skeptical about imagining that people are reluctant to invest in manufacturing because it takes so long to get your returns. Mining is a whole different ballgame entirely. So people are really skeptical when it comes to mining. Like, I think it's just 1 or 2 banks now that have a mining desk. So it's something that has been an issue for a really long time. And I think we all know that there's a huge security issue in the upstream mining space. But regardless of all of this, I would also like to mention that there's actually opportunity because there are still low-hanging fruits. So there's opportunity to actually build the sector in skill acquisition and capacity development. And I'm happy that there are a number of people on the panel that are involved in things like this. So for me, coming from an employer perspective, in the sense, I'm also looking for those to employ in the mining sector. There are so many gaps in terms of education. So I think previous speakers had already mentioned things like including courses in existing school curriculums, and people you should be able to go to school to learn these things. And then we should also work towards building prestigious or certified technical colleges or vocational centers that can compete globally, because we also want to be sure of the work going out. So what I'll say is, I think there should be a bit more research into the kind of skills that are needed. I'm going to use my field, which is specifically gemstone mining, to give an example. So, for example, when a miner is mining a gemstone, they need to know specific things, or else mining a gemstone is not the same as mining and zinc or mining other industrial minerals. If you don't have the particular skill to know how to mine a gemstone, you're going to lose the value of that gemstone because you're going to end up damaging it. So there's specific things that need to know. So yes, the skill development, certifying these people and all of that, very important. But there should be some kind of risk. And what I think mentioned about what they did, and I think is excellent with the Dangote entries, to find out exactly what is needed and work towards getting these informal people into those spaces. So you're training specifically for a role. I'll emphasize again on the capacity development, because I think there's a huge gap in the mining sector. It's not like other industries where you can post a job online and get hundreds of responses or whatever. It's really difficult to find skills for people, both actually throughout the value chain. So I'm talking about miners, gem dealers, processors, gemologists, jewelers, manufacturers. There are just really few people that have this skill or are able to do this work. So I think increasing that, there's a model that has been somewhat successful in the past, which is, I think many of us will know about the apprenticeship model, where someone comes into a large company and is under the tutelage of the master, the company head, for a number of years, and is giving some kind of grant to start their business afterwards. I think expanding on something like that and just developing it a bit more and then maybe putting it on a larger scale will actually do a lot. So that's what I have to say about that. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Lieutenant. This is quite insightful. Thank you so much. So I'm trying to connect the dots from what Akin shared, from what Sonny shared, and I'm also trying to link with what Mo said, and it's all boiling down to what we can actually call education. It doesn't have to be formal, but it's a form of education, whether it be apprenticeship or some form of training, because their performance also depends on their level of insight and capacity or capabilities in the areas with which they're supposed to create values and add value. So I would like to ask this question, and this is to all the panelists, but I'm directing this to Mo particularly, knowing that you have been in the education sector for quite some time. And I would like you to use that perspective to share what I'm about to ask right now. And this is also open to the rest of the speakers. So this is my question, Mo. If you were to design a program to transform and grow the informal sector, what is that one ingredient that you like to see that will help us actually achieve what we're trying to achieve if we're going to achieve national prosperity, particularly in that sector, because we have quite a number of persons in that sector. So if you're to design a program to transform and grow the informal sector, what's that one ingredient you like to see?
Thank you for that question. I don't know whether you can separate growing the informal sector from the elephant in the room, which is infrastructure. And so I think that a bulk of our attention needs to go to what sort of infrastructure is available to grow the informal sector. And as we think about infrastructure, I don't know again whether we can separate that from real solid capacity development. So I would say that a focus on the infrastructure, the tools and the resources, as well as the know-how to build capacity in this sector. How do we train the instructors? Lutana spoke about apprenticeships. What is the structure through which apprenticeships can be scaled? How do we build capacity in the instructors, in the masters? I think for me, these would be the ingredients. I'm sorry, it's not one ingredient, but I think it's a combination of factors that I would like to see prioritized. And not only in the informal sector, when we think about natural resource development, and if you don't mind, I'll just share a little bit about what I've been reflecting on. And when I talk about infrastructure, I mean, if we're going to increase a value, if we're going to really think about revenue generation from the natural resources that we have been blessed with, whether they're gemstones or cocoa or oil, the reality is first understanding that the greater value comes from processing. So we can all be, sort of focus on exporting raw cocoa, for example. But the real value is when you actually begin to export chocolates. And I saw some data around the cost of, some of the most expensive chocolates that come from Belgium and Switzerland. 500 grams of chocolate costing $50. And then when you look at the cost of the raw cocoa, it's $1. And so these entities, these foreign entities have added about $98 worth of value. And when you think about the fact that the bulk of what is needed for chocolate is actually cocoa. You can get milk anywhere, you can get sugar anywhere, but we produce the cocoa, so why are we not exporting the chocolate? The same thing, goes for our crude oil, right? So what do you need? The bulk of what you need, in that whole, whether upstream or downstream sector, is the crude oil itself. But yet the reality is that we continue to import pretty much all our refined products. Our refineries are not even working. And then finally, I'll talk about human resources because, human beings power all of these things. When we realize that we have 15,000 Nigerian doctors in the United Kingdom and the United States, the bulk of whom have been trained in Nigeria, we realize that what we're doing is we're subsidizing healthcare in other countries. And when we put all of these together, again, it comes to infrastructure. What tools do we have to be able to ensure that we can build technical knowledge, the capacity to really maximize value creation from these resources that we have been blessed with? And so that's why I would focus, on infrastructure and also in the building of human capacity. Stephen?
Awesome, thank you so much. That's really awesome. So, like you said, there's no one ingredient here. Infrastructure is one key ingredient, also human capacity in terms of human capital now, also very vital. And this will lead me to Akin right now. So Akin, I'll be coming to you now, and I would like you to really share, particularly from your experience, knowing that infrastructure is key, and you have like a couple of experiences working in the public sector, what you've done in Lagos and what you're doing in Ekiti. I also know you as a proud ambassador of tech. You love tech. I mean, what you did in Lagos, really remarkable. Now, looking at all the things that we have shared so far, and also exploring some opportunities that we see happen in India, where they leverage a lot on a number of their people, because they have a lot of population just like China. For instance, we see certain software developments taking place in India, companies in the US outsourcing software development in India. hardware development, they're outsourcing to organizations in China. And in Nigeria, we can say we have the population, but something is missing somewhere. Why are we not having that same kind where other nations can begin to outsource certain services to Nigeria, solve certain problems that affects the world? So I want to ask you now, from your own experience and given the kind of passion that you have, what new interventions do we need to harness the opportunities that we have in terms of human capacity and talents, the environments that we have, what whether it be education, whatever model it might be, but what new interventions do you think we need to bring into bear here so that we can achieve some relevance? You can also share what you're currently doing at Ekiti presently now, and let's see how that adds up to what we're sharing. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. So I'll start with what we did yesterday in Ekiti State. We brought down, the governor issued an executive order reducing the cost of laying fiber optic cables for broadband from what was 4,500 naira per meter to 145 naira per meter. Now, for me, that's significant because it's taking us to the National Economic Council approved cost of 145 naira per meter. If you think about all of the things we're talking about now, democratizing learning, teaching people, digital skills training, improving the use of technology, all of these things rise and fall with broadband penetration. You find that in many states in the country, broadband penetration is barely scratching 30–40%. So how do you then intervene at scale? How do you create the enablers and give people the tools to build some of the products that tend to change how we look at the world? So for me, it's easily, again, governments, you create the enabling environment, you step aside. So what we've done with reducing broadband, the cost of broadband, is actually stimulating infrastructure development, because it means that if someone wants to lay fiber, before at 4,500 naira a meter, that is a cost of 4.5 million per kilometer. So that's the context, right? That's a cost of 450 million for 100 kilometers. That's minus the actual cost of the hardware. That's just paying to dig and cover the ground and put your wires in. So we as government need to make the cost of providing the infrastructure we require a lot cheaper. I think that's my first point. The second point is also saying, how do we start to connect town and gown? So for example, if you think about tertiary education, I feel there's a great opportunity to build and set out, even if it's small technology labs in universities, set out labs where students and lecturers can build products, can solve problems, but you also then have something as simple as just demo days for companies, for governments to come and see what's been built, what they can use, and to even define problems for these institutions to solve. I think the real challenge is just ensuring that a lot of the stuff we learn at tertiary level, for example, is actually very useful to the industry. And one of the ways to bridge that gap is by bringing those two sectors together frequently. My other point is I generally feel that Nigeria now needs to focus on 2 or 3 sectors and say, what do we need to own these sectors? I'm a big fan of focusing on business process outsourcing for a bunch of reasons. I think in its most basic form, something as simple as customer service, call center operations, I think we can own in the country. When I speak to BPO, large global BPO operators, one of the things that jumps out is that Nigerians speak relatively toneless English. Remember, we're competing with countries like Vietnam, Philippines, and India for this service. So the fact that we speak relatively toneless English means that we need very little accent training. And that already gives us some competitive advantage over some of the other countries we are competing with. However, the biggest issue we find is without the right level of broadband connectivity, you tend to have a significant percentage of dropped calls. Just joining this discussion from Ado-Ekiti has been challenging, and I've had to drop out and come back in several times just because my internet connection isn't reliable. Now imagine if I was a call center operator and I couldn't even complete a phone call very quickly, my employer will lose whatever contract they have. So we have to support, for me, the way to put tens of millions of Nigerians in jobs is say, look, let's look at the most basic service that we need technology for. Let's build centers of excellence where we can put 10 to 50,000 people within specific locations. We might not be able to build this across the country, but if Ekiti or Kaura Namoda becomes a hub for customer service or business process outsourcing, people will migrate from other parts of the country into that place. And that's the one thing that I also think which is why I think we need to find very specific centers of excellence. I think that Nigeria as a country, we have our population disaggregated in such a way that we don't have the right density for growth. And that's one of the big things that economic clusters and special economic zones do. They force internal migration. They force labor to move to where productivity is optimal. And that's one thing as a society, one big idea that I'd like to leave this conversation with, that there's no value in having people inhabiting all over the country in sparsely populated areas. It's a lot more difficult to deliver service if they're just small communities of 20 to 50 or 100 people, tens of kilometers apart. What we need to do is to drive clusters where all those people now move into more densely populated cities, where you can then start to spur development. I mean, I like a book I really like is Triumph of the Cities. And it's really just saying, look, you need to have density because then you can deliver service at scale. Then you can reach more people. Then people are forced to innovate, and so for me, the big idea would be saying, look, across the country, let's identify 8 or 10 places where we effectively build these economic zones. And then we start to target things like business process outsourcing. We start to target things like customer service, and over time, the people who go through those programs will earn enough money and they will hone that skill, and then they will move on to something like software development or software engineering. It's not an accident that you find that companies like Google, Microsoft, Facebook spin off the next set of founders because there's repeated excellence working for those companies. There's something you learn about working in those companies that helps you build your own business subsequently. So that's the one thing I think that we need to do to at least start to attack what is effectively a 50% youth unemployment problem. We mustn't try to do too many exotic things at the start. Let's start with the simple stuff: customer service, call center operations, basic troubleshooting work, and do this at scale. Do this and employ 100, 200,000 people. Then you start to make a dent in the numbers. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Akin. This is just quite brilliant. Really, really brilliant. Thank you so much for sharing this. I'll still come back to you. But before then, I can see that our time is really moving really fast because we're supposed to wrap this up since panel 2 will start in a few minutes from now. So I'll really be fast with this now. This is like a concluding question, and I'm addressing this to you, Mo. I also like to hear your thoughts on this, Sonny and Lotana. But let me start with you, Mo. Understanding that for things to thrive, we need an ecosystem like Akin just shared. He gave Silicon Valley as an example and a couple of ecosystems that will be needed to ensure that we drive things. So now I would like to know, because there are various schools of thoughts, like for instance, there's a school of thought that says if you develop good researchers and problem solvers, you could automatically build great companies like Google, which will lead to the creation of more jobs and all that. So this, talks about building a proper ecosystem. So can entrepreneurship really be taught? Because it's one thing to have the talents, but maybe we need some persons who can think in a different way to engage the available talents and create massive value from engaging existing talents. Because truth be told, Nigeria has a couple of talented people. Besides saying, oh, maybe there might be some that will need to sharpen up their skills and the likes of that. But my question is this: can entrepreneurship really be taught? If so, what can we begin to do to cultivate entrepreneurs? I would like to give you about a minute to answer that. Modipe.
Thank you, Stephen. I think that what Aki has just shared underscores the point that entrepreneurship can be taught, and entrepreneurs can be raised, and you can get better as an entrepreneur. I just want to add some texture, if I may, to some of the important points that he has put forward. The reality is that in Nigeria today, talent is not our challenge. I'm tempted to think that talent management and proper infrastructure around that talent is more of the issue that we're facing. And so, for example, he talked about, the call centers and other opportunities around there. When I think about the cost of doing business, in Nigeria, I'm an entrepreneur as well. I have lots and lots of colleagues, in India, for example. The reality is that in countries that operate massive call center hubs, the cost of power to them is about 70% of their cost of operations. In Nigeria, on average, it's about 30%. So what you say, Aki, about clusters, building these clusters, industry clusters, I think is very important, because then we can drive infrastructure to those areas and we can reduce the cost of doing business. I'm particularly enthused by the work of organizations like Andela and CC Hub, because what they are doing is they are creating structure around talent, and we need that. It's one thing to be talented. It's a completely different thing to run a business. So when we think about setting up bank accounts, financial statements, managing staff, policies, governance, setting up an office, whoever is going to invest in your business is going to be very, very careful about ticking the boxes where these areas are concerned. And so I would agree that talent can definitely be taught, and entrepreneurship can be taught, and entrepreneurship can be strengthened. But we have to also create some sort of structure around how we manage that talent, and some sort of curriculum around how we build the capacity of that talent as well.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Mo. Sonny, can we hear your thoughts on this? Just about a minute.
All right. So, of course, I'm actually going to agree with him. Just like any other thing, I think entrepreneurship can be taught. I mean, people go to MITs, Harvard to learn these things, and we've seen successful entrepreneurs, that actually come out of this school just by going to this school, really. So, it's the same thing across board, even among the blue collar sector. So, like I explained earlier on, a lot of them are actually talented, even when they are discriminated against. They're actually talented. What they lack is, basic level of, being an entrepreneur, how to relate with customers, stuff like that. And that's basically what usually separates the independent guys from the guys that actually went to the vocational school, which they were being taught. They were actually being taught there, really. So yes, so I agree with them. You can actually be taught.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Sonny. So this is reinforcing the points we've heard earlier. Lotana, so what's your take on this?
Yeah, so I agree with Modipe and the last speaker. Sorry, I didn't get the name. Entrepreneurship can definitely be taught. And
Modipe, that's her name.
Yeah, sorry, I didn't hear that.
I thought you were trying to clarify Modipe's name. I said that's Modipe Adefesa, that's her name.
Okay, yeah, the gentleman who just spoke before me is who I was trying to.
Sunny.
Oh, that's Murtala Sunny.
Oh, yes. So, yeah, I believe it can be, entrepreneurship can be taught and skills can be developed, provided people actually have the will to learn. I'll add that just from experience. And there are people who are more inclined than others naturally, but I believe generally it can be taught. And I also want to mention, like, I'm aware of some projects going on in the mining sector, which are focused on developing clusters as well around areas that are known for particular minerals, which I think is an excellent idea. So I just wanted to put that as well. So I believe if from here, I mean, from this panel, we all kind of work together, because I believe there are so many people that have so much to give and so much to contribute to entrepreneurship in this country, and just in terms of building a system that actually works. I think we should all come together and do something, if that makes any sense. So thank you.
Thank you so much, Lieutenant. Aki, I'm coming to you. Of course, I already know your thoughts. You shared your thoughts on that during the course of your conversation. So I'd just like to go straight to asking you this, and I'll give you about a minute to just attend to this. I know you're working on something in Ekiti, the New Ekiti Knowledge Zone Initiative. So I would like to hear and also share with our attendees exactly what that's about and what you're intending to do to transform that state. Just a minute.
Okay, so the knowledge zone is effectively saying anything that that we can commercialize from knowledge can work out of that zone, ensuring that we crowd in infrastructure. So Mo made the point about power, things like broadband, security, housing, etc. So we have 1,600 hectares of space. We are building this in modules. So we split it into 100 hectare splits. And the essence is to say, if you're a foreign university and you want to run a campus out of Nigeria, come to Ekiti. The knowledge zone is also within what we call the education quadrangle, where there's Afe Babalola University, there's Ekiti State University, there's a College of Education in Ikere, College of Agriculture in Ishon, there's a Federal University in Oye, and that's minus the universities in the surrounding states, in Kogi, in Kwara, in Ondo, and in Osun. So we want all of those students to see the knowledge zone as a place to work, where we want to encourage back office operations of companies like IBM, like InterSwitch, like System Spec, to bring those back office operations to Ekiti. Data centers where possible, disaster recovery centers, call centers, all those businesses come and sit in Ekiti, but also using the universities as anchors. You can then come there to set up people like 54G, like Helium Health. We want them to now come and work with the biomedical teams in those universities and set up their hubs in Ekiti State. And you find that when you do that, you then start to spin off smaller startups. Then you can start building co-working spaces, and before you know it, in 5 to 10 years, you build a community. So what we're not doing is putting this in the middle of nowhere. What we're doing is putting this in the center of where learning currently exists, so that there's a student community that feel that they can feed into the zone. So what we've done is we've learned what's worked and what's not worked in many markets. And it's a pretty ambitious project, but we at least want to get it to a point where it's irreversible, so that subsequent governments that come after our administration build on the foundation we've set.
Awesome, thanks a lot, Maki. This is really enriching. So we'll just go straight to the Q&A, that is the questions already asked by the participants. Of course, we may not be able to answer all because of the time we have, because we actually have about 5 minutes to be out of this session. So I'd just like to go straight to the question and answer session straight. Attending to the questions of our attendees. So I'll start with the first one by David. And this is addressed to you, Akin. I believe Akin said, he said, hello, Akin, what do young promising youths do when they are trained but don't have the infrastructure like internet to build viable enterprises? I think you've answered a bit of this, but maybe I might share it in a few seconds on that.
I think one of the things, as a short-term solution, one of the things we tried to do at the Employment Trust Fund was to provide workspace vouchers for these kind of entrepreneurs to go and work out of co-working spaces on the government's bill. So effectively, you know that you have broadband, you have power, you have shared services, and all you're focused on is building your product. I think that many other states can do that, where there is a critical mass of entrepreneurs. But that's only a short-term solution. Longer term, it is making sure that broadband is cheaper, such that people can build these businesses in their garages before they then scale and have to set up formal offices. So for me, I think that's the fundamental thing that we as states must work on. And hopefully the work we've done in Ekiti, bringing down the right of way cost, is emulated by many other states. And collectively, for me, a rising tide lifts all boats. So if we do this in Ekiti, we expect that other states will do it.
Yeah.
To get the cost of first access, right? So many people don't even have access to decent internet. When we solve the access problem, the market dynamics will bring the cost down.
Thanks a lot for that. So Mo, this is addressed to you. I see you've already indicated interest to answer it. It's even addressed at you. Do you want me to read it out or you just go ahead?
I think that might be the question on EdTech. So I think the question is, the EdTech space is receiving a lot of attention because of COVID-19. A lot of entrepreneurs are trying to jump in on the wave and create solutions, but many don't have in-depth understanding of the Nigerian education system. And so how do we help entrepreneurs develop adequate knowledge about the sector? This is an area of concern for us. And interestingly, even ahead of the pandemic, the organization where I work, which is Step Center, had developed a community of practice and knowledge called the National Innovation Collaborative on Education. And the idea behind NICE, which is the acronym, is that it would be the community that powered our annual education summit, which is the Education Innovation Summit, the NEDI Summit, which is held for 5 years. And this community is a group of people who want to see innovations in education scale, and they want to help that process, and they want to be involved in that process of scaling so that many more children will be involved. And I think as a spin-off of NICE, we piloted something that was quite innovative, I think, last year, which was called Ed Meets Tech. And the idea was we would have education sector practitioners in a room together with technology entrepreneurs. And it was mind-blowing in the sense that very often tech entrepreneurs believe that they are solving a problem, and they are solving a problem. It's just that it's not my problem they're solving. It's not the state's problem they're solving. It's not Nigeria's problem they're solving. They're solving a problem in America, but they're trying to market it to people in Nigeria, and it doesn't work. And so what we have done is to create that space where technology entrepreneurs and people who are innovating in the tech space can have direct access with the people that are either making policy decisions in the education sector or people who are practitioners, teachers, educators, school owners, and they meet and they have conversations. And from there, tech innovators get the idea that enables them to then go and co-create innovations that truly solve problems. So I just wanted to put that there for David.
Awesome. So for anyone who would like to start an edtech company, try to be involved in that, I think they should get in touch with you, right? They can just get in touch with you.
Yes, absolutely. Please feel free to get in touch with me.
Awesome. Thanks a lot. So we're coming to you, Muritala Sani. There's a question here for you, also by David Owemi. So the question is this: do you train the artisans on your platform? What challenges have you found in finding and training artisans? A minute.
So we don't train them. Like I said initially, we don't train them in skills. Okay, we offer them customer service training. That's all the training that we offer to them. So we actually partner with vocational schools and technical centers to try to get the best of those that have actually gone through proper skill training. But even at that, those were not enough. Okay, because the amount of jobs that we get, especially from Lagos, it's not enough for. It's actually more than if we just rely on the ones that we get from the professional school. So we go ahead and get the independent guys. Only that we now run a lot of background checks and then, like address verification, guarantor verification, and all of that. But we still, try to at least take 1 or 2 days to try to take them through the WISABI policy and the WISABI way. So those are the kind of trainings that we offer on the platform. But aside from that, we don't offer the skill training themselves.
Awesome. Thank you very much, Sonny. We are really thankful. So we're going to be wrapping up this session. Like I said, time will not permit us to answer all questions, but we're going to note these questions and ensure that we direct them and have them all answered and also replied to the rest of you. I want to use the opportunity to appreciate and acknowledge all our panelists. You have done so well for us. Aki, thank you so much. Despite your busy schedule, as well as the role you're playing in Ekiti State, coupled with the challenges that you just expressed during your presentation and the conversations that we had, you still made it. Thank you so much. Thank you. Sonny, also thank you, even with the short notice. Mo, you've always been a supporter from the beginning. Thank you so much. We deeply appreciate your support and the help you've also provided to us. Also in partnership with Sycamore Africa. Thank you so much. We deeply appreciate you. To attendees, thank you. I would like to invite Kunle up now to make some few announcements even as we wrap up this session. Kunle, are you there? Colin, are you there? Oh, okay. Well, I think it's having some internet hitches there. So I think I'll just share the announcement. The announcement basically is, so the next session is on money and impact. And we're going to be moving into that session, which is starting at 1:30. That's 10 minutes from now. A number of persons that can be waiting have to ensure that we support them to get them all in. So thank you again to all our panelists. We're deeply grateful for your contribution and the value really added. We acknowledge you deeply. Attendees, thank you so much. We acknowledge and recognize you as well. Thank you so much and have an amazing time. We're moving to.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you so much.